in the circle up when we prayed in this morning, one of the things that Cindy said is, and your notes will just fall away and you will know what to say. There go the notes. Years ago, Ann and I were in Talkeetna, and we were hauling freight up to our cabin. And it was February, shorter days. We had a lot of snow, and we were hauling stuff through town in the truck, and then reloading everything in the sleds in the parking, the public parking lot, and then have to go back. Well, one of my cardinal rules for going to the cabin and whatnot is the pin always stays with the trailer, the item that's being towed. That way you don't have to go search for it. You know that it's always right there. It's on the sled, it's on the trailer, it's on the whatever you're taking. Everybody knows. If it's not there, Don gets mad. Well, it was gone. We had a guy who was unfamiliar with my little laws and rules, and it was lost. And I had driven the truck all the way back to 2nd Street. And back in those days, there was no Ace Hardware store. There was no Lowe's, or there wasn't a place. And there was a lot of snow. But Ann and I we were either in practitioner training or we were newly shiny licensed practitioners. And well, if we're practitioners, we ought to be able to do something about that. So, my gosh, I did a little treatment and we're going to find it. And we started walking, and I got about a block down there, and I looked down, and in that snow, a needle in a haystack, there it was. There was that pin. What a deal. So fast forward a couple of years, and just about the same kind of situation. We got there, and I pick up the front of the sled, no pin. And I had driven right back to 2nd Street and back, and I just knew that pin was lost. Once again, did a little treatment, gonna find it. Start walking back, walked all the way to 2nd Street, didn't see it. Well, what do? We don't give up. So another little treatment, and I turned around and I walked all the way back. All this is taking maybe, I don't know, half hour each trip, so it's not real quick. I walked all the way back, and this time I'm really paying close attention, and I'm really looking at everything. Got all the way back, and I'm standing next to the end of that truck, and I thought, God, I don't know what we're going to do. We can't haul the sled without the pin. And Ann said, oh, is that what you're doing? Pin's right there on the bumper. Whoever had taken it off just put it on the bumper. So my 2 lessons from this little story today. Number 1 is that there is a power in the universe, and it can work with us, and it can help us when we need it. We open ourselves up to receive that. We can get the assistance from a higher power. And number 2, sometimes we walk around looking for something that we already have. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all for coming out. It's warmed up quite a bit. We're not in the negative temperatures anymore. In fact, we're above freezing. Wow.
Nice.
And the weatherman said we're going to be back below 0 by Wednesday. So I guess we'll take this 30-some degree temperatures and be thankful for it. So thank you all for coming out today. And thank you for those of you watching on YouTube. Thank you for watching as well. I want you to know that if you ever are in this area, please stop by and be a part of one of our services. I promise you that we will do our level best to make you feel right at home. I want to thank Erin. Where'd she go?
Split.
The beautiful music, and for leading the choir, Jessica for working with the choir, and everybody in the choir. It makes such a difference. Thank you all so much. I also want to thank our sound team. And all of you should be filled with gratitude for the sound team, because it is their quick actions that mutes my microphone, so you will not be subjected to the torture of me trying to sing. So, and sometimes I get so wrapped up in the music I start singing. So, this morning, There Is Only Love. When we walked on the coals. We walked the hot coals back in Carolina. What an experience that was. I was sharing it with Cindy. There were over 100 ministers, and that's what they were singing as we walked across those hot coals. Touches me. So thank you all very much. So the two lessons that I learned. One, you are enough. It's easy to go through life thinking that you need something to be complete. You know, if only I were a little bit taller. You know, I wasn't quite so short. If only, you know, I had a full head of hair. I looked like Sam instead of me. If only I had this, or if only I had that. If I had a more outgoing personality, if I was really eager to jump in, I'd be better at compassionate care and hospital visits and things like that. If only, you know, I had that doctorate, I would have more authority behind what I say. But what I submit, this is what I absolutely believe, and I bring this to you, that there is an infinite power, and this infinite power created all of everything. It created all of the heavens, the entire cosmos, including our galaxy, this planet, and everything on it. And it goes together in this absolutely amazing clockwork of synchronicity, the way that the planets revolve around the sun, the way the tides work, how that all goes together with the fish in the sea, and the salmon returning, and the bears that feed on the salmon, and then the dead salmon that decompose, and how they are part of the life cycle that produces. It's amazing. This thing is built, it is done with absolute perfection. And yet we as human beings sit here and think, oh, God did all this wonderful stuff. It made no mistakes. It is absolutely perfect in every way for everything except for me. And I'm too short. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the degree. Think that through for just a minute. You are enough. You have everything that you need. We are all unique. No two of us are alike. We're a lot different than even the snowflakes. No two of us are even remotely alike. And there's a reason for that. And that's that each and every one of us have something that we're bringing to the party. Each one of us has something unique that we are bringing to this magnificent party that we can call life. And yet we're all trying to pour ourselves into a mold and be something else. I've told how my first years here, all I did is try to be Roger Teal of the North. I thought Roger Teal was the greatest minister that had ever walked. I wanted to be just like Roger Teal. And I ended up being a really crappy Roger Teal. So you're going to have to suffer with the best Don that you can get. I don't think that was in my talk. Where am I? Ernest Holmes, talking about mistakes. Ernest Holmes wrote, "No mistakes have been made, none are being made, and none can be made." And that means you're included in that. Well, we were talking about that in the Pratt class, and here we've got everybody but Stevie today. We've got 3 of our 4 Prac 2 students. They're awesome. And we were in class and we were talking about this idea of that there are no mistakes. And we were reading that line from Holmes. Bob happened to have his Eric Butterworth book open. Oh, Reverend Don, look at this. Eric Butterworth said exactly the same thing. This is a thread that goes through many religions, many philosophies, that there are no mistakes, and that includes you. But sometimes we do go around looking for something that we already have. Like a clothespin that's been sitting on the bumper all along, and I can spend hours walking back and forth looking down, knowing that it's in the snow somewhere when I really had it all along. An example of that, we can go back to the Hebrew scriptures in the second book of Kings. Elisha came upon a widow, and this widow was destitute. She was ready to lose all of everything, and he pulled out the old oil that never goes away trick that we remember that from Hanukkah. Well, the same kind of thing. And he told her to go out and get all these vessels and then to take this one little tiny vessel of oil that she had and start pouring it in. She filled up many jugs and everything, and she's able to sell all this oil and do it. But she already had everything that she needed. Another good example of that from scriptures, we can turn to the Christian Gospels, and this story is one that really, it's kind of interesting because it is in all three of the synoptic Gospels as well as John, and this is the story of how Jesus fed the multitudes. Supposedly he had 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and with that he was able to feed 5,000 people. One book says 4,000, but a lot of people. He fed a lot of people with 2 fish and a few loaves of bread, or big rolls, I guess was a better translation, but it wasn't much bread either. Now, I don't know, I wasn't there, but I kind of doubt that that's exactly what happened. I don't know. But here's what I do know, is that according to the story, Jesus asked what we had, and the disciples said, hey boss, you know, we haven't got a whole lot, and it's starting to get dark. People are getting restless. They're getting hungry. Nearest town isn't going to have enough bread for all these people. What do you think we're going to do? And his little boy stepped up and he said, well, I have 2 fish and 5 loaves. And Jesus said, okay, take that and start passing it out to the people. And it was just like the story with the oil. They just kept giving out pieces of fish, and they just kept having more. They kept giving out bread, and they just kept having more. How can that possibly be? It's called the law of circulation. When we step in and we start giving, then it starts to circulate and it goes around. I wonder how many people sat there thinking, yeah, I'm kind of hungry, and God, look at that little kid's willing to share what little he has. Maybe I ought to share a little bit too. And they started opening that packs. And we know from that time of day, for people to walk as far as they did out into the desert to attend these lectures or whatever it was, the teachings of Jesus, they wouldn't have just walked out there with anything. I mean, imagine in the United States today, people are going to one of these big NASCAR races without any beer. It just probably wouldn't happen. Well, they didn't go out into the wilderness, the desert, with no provisions at all. And maybe they did sense that there wasn't enough. But once they started to share, they found out that they had plenty. And when they shared with one another, they ended up with, what, 12 extra baskets of fish and bread. We already have everything that we need. You have enough. You have the talents, the skills, and all of the attributes to fulfill your destiny. Not my destiny, not Cindy's destiny, but your destiny. You have everything that you need to get it done. It comes with the package. You are unique and perfect in your way. Sometimes we don't recognize our own uniqueness. We don't recognize our own specialness, if you will. And when we don't do that, then we start to tend to rely on other people for our own sense of our own worth. We rely on other people to make ourselves feel good about who we are. If we're relying on other people for our own validation, we're in trouble, because people change. People's attitudes change. If you don't believe me, you can just ask Jesus. I mean, he came into town on Wednesday riding on a donkey, and they're putting down leaves before him and crying Hosanna, and the greatest thing ever was. And by Friday, they're saying, crucify him, crucify him. People change. Truth doesn't change. Truth is permanent. And the truth is that you are made in the image and likeness of God, and that creative force, when it made you, it gave you everything that you need to fulfill what it is you're here to do. My second lesson, and that is that this power of the universe is for you. This is another story built on our cabin, and it predates my first story. I had this bright idea to build my cabin on old utility poles, and the utility pole salesman happened to be in my office, and I was talking to him, and he said, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And well, how long are these going to last? He said, that should last 200 years. Well, that'll last me. And where can I get them? You know, you got any samples I can have? He says, nah, ATU's got them down there, and they're the short ones. I can't use them anymore, and got a big yard of them. In fact, they're trying to get rid of them. Go down and ask. They'll give them to you. And boy, I did. And so I got some big old telephone poles, and I didn't know how much they were going to weigh. I loaded my little 3/4 ton pickup. So anyway, I've got a harebrained scheme how to get all this done, and we got these telephone poles to the bottom of the big hill, and we could not get them with a sled, with anything up the hill. But we had other things we couldn't either, but. So I got to come along, I got chains, I got everything, and I would pull these big telephone poles up this hill an inch at a time. And so I'm snick, thick, snick. Well, the hill was so steep, it was pulling the log from above, and so it was augering into the snow. And I get 6 inches and couldn't go anymore. I'd have to stop, walk, it's probably 30 yards down this steep hill, have Ann come up from the bottom, and both of us would lift up and pop, and we'd go 6 inches. Back up to the top. A day later, and we didn't even have one telephone pole to the top of the hill, and it was all in this one really steep spot. And there's a big tree right in the way right there, and I was using probably not very good language to describe that tree, and I was ready to give up. Dan, we can't do it. I cannot do this. It would take us months. The snow would be all gone, and I'd still be trying to get these stupid logs up this hill. And Ann said, oh, why don't we do this? And she said, I can lean against this tree, and if I use my legs, I could pop the front of that log up, and you don't have to come down every time. She sat there, tick, 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 tick. It'd auger in, boop, up, tick, 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 tick. And we went 1 inch at a time and drug that first log up. We went back the next day, and we got the next 9 up the next day. And Ann laid against that, and every time it had come, she'd lift it with her legs. That power will work with us. It can help us when we open ourselves up to it. My last story. This was Texas. A lady with 2 small children was crossing a bridge over a big, deep gorge. It was a long way down. And as she went across, an 18-wheeler was coming the other way, and it lost control, and it started spinning, and it came into her lane and smashed her and knocked her little car completely through the retaining thing, knocked it completely through the pedestrian walkway that was on the outside, and left her car in mangles, teetering over the edge of this precipice to fall off the bridge and all the way down. And the police arrived there, and they saw the condition, and they called in fatalities. They said the ambulances weren't even heard. Nobody could have lived that. And then they heard a noise inside that car and they said, my God, somebody is in there alive. And they tried to figure out how to get out and get it, but it was teetering right there. And then every time the wind would blow, it'd shift and go a little further. And they got a guy in a harness and got out, and he got up, and when he was on the back bumper, it was fine. But as he got further out, the car started tilting more and more and more, and he had to retreat. They didn't know what to do. And just about then, a guy in a Navy uniform walked up, and he went up to the incident commander, and he says, I think I can help. And the guy says, how's that? And he says, I'm with the, whatever it is, the 3rd Engineering Division with the Naval Station, da-da-da-da. And he says, we have a forklift. And that thing is, there's only 3 of them in the world, but it has a reach. It can go way out like 12 feet. And the head rotates, and it can up, down, rotate side to side and whatnot. And fully extended, it can lift 11,000 pounds. And the incident commander said, well, yeah, that'd be great if we had it here. How do we get it here? And just as he said that, up drove this ginormous forklift. And the Navy guy said, well, it's here right now. We are en route to so-and-so, and it's here on scene, and we can help. They moved up, picked up the car, saved the lady and her 2 small children. And as they came down and the ambulances took the kids off and the lady off to the hospital, the naval engineer reported to the incident commander, yeah, I was really lucky. He said, we should have been through here 3 hours ago, but we got held up several miles back and we had to stop for over 3 hours. And if there hadn't have been that coincidence that stopped them, they would have been way on their way. But these kinds of stories exist. I tell them every Sunday. These stories, this kind of stuff happens all the time, and it can happen for you. When we open ourselves up and we allow that divine to help us, to work with us, miraculous things can happen. So, I want to close today with the sacred reading. And I read it a little bit differently than Cindy, but it's exactly the same words. We should be able to look a discordant fact in the face and deny its reality, since we know its seeming reality is borrowed from an illusion, from chaos and old night. Our standard is one of perfection. And then Holmes goes on to quote the Christian Gospels. Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. And then Holmes continues, we should be able to look at a wrong condition with the knowledge that we can change it. Wow. We should be able to look at a wrong condition with the knowledge that we can change it. And so it is with that knowledge that I invite my colleagues, the practitioners, to join me in prayer and join me in knowing a higher truth for our congregation. Just simply knowing that infinite power, that infinite presence that has created the cosmos and everything in it is indeed within each and every one of us. We are how that force experiences this thing called life. And it has given us life, that it may experience that through us. And so it has given us everything that we need. And so as we go through our life, we're given the opportunity to make all kinds of choices. Some of the choices we make are in alignment with our highest good, and some of our choices are not. But it is all part of that thing called life that infinite creative force is experiencing as us. And so we get to choose. We get to choose whether we are going to find the clevis pin or whether we are going to walk around town with our head down when we've already got it on our bumper. That's our choice. And so now I embrace in this prayer serenity. I just simply know that the nature of that infinite creative force is one of serenity. And so we just open ourselves up to that serenity, the serenity to accept the things as they are. The courage to change the things that we cannot change. And the wisdom to know the difference. And so we just give thanks. We give thanks for our awareness of the power and the presence of the divine in our lives. And now we can just approach our day and our week with the confidence at knowing that there is a power that's working on our behalf. We let it go, we let it be, and so it is.
Yes.